This is my student writing survey. So students will fill this out prior to conferencing with me. And what it does is it gives me a quick snapshot of what they're working on. It also shares with them, helps them to choose their goal and be a little bit more reflective. It gives them a framework in order to be reflective. This can all be done on paper, but I do find it a lot easier to do it through a Google form. So I'll walk you through it. So I give them a QR code that sits at my guided reading table that links them right to this form. They choose their day of conference. So they just simply select the date. And, oh, hold on, let me see a preview of this. Here we go. Okay, so they select the date and it pops up on a calendar. So they would pick whatever date it is that they are meeting with me. They would choose my name. Now, normally I would have my entire class list written in here, which is easy enough to do when you're adding a form. You just add all of their names when you're making the form. So they would choose their name, and then they choose what kind of writing they were completing. So because I allow it to be pretty open-ended, I let them choose what they're writing. So some students might be writing a narrative, others might be writing a recount, others might be writing a persuasive text. I find that we move through these pretty similarly year after year. I do find recounts are often first, followed by personal narratives and reports. And as we get further into the year, we're starting to talk about informational, expository, procedural, persuasive, descriptive, and also letter goes up there as the beginning as well. Depending on their previous experience in primary, will determine whether or not they're comfortable with the letter. So students simply check, okay, I'm writing a report. I click next. Oh, I better pick a date or else it won't. Okay, so I'm meeting tomorrow. And it clicks next. And it automatically pops them into this rubric that I've created that's specifically tied to report writing. So what's your report about? Explain your topic and what your subtopics are. So they provide me a brief summary. That allows me, when I'm looking back at my data, to remind myself, if you're looking at 30 different reports, sometimes having a quick summary about what it was is very helpful for you. And they simply just go through the rubric. And we talk about how this is filled out. So they fill it out, okay, so planning and organizing. Oh, I did okay on that. Research, maybe they struggled with research. Their drafting was okay. Revising was okay. Maybe editing still wasn't great. And maybe it wasn't published yet, so they'll pick NA. So when they look at this, we talk about, okay, if that's where you're rating yourself, what two areas are you rating yourself the lowest? Well, you're rating pre-writing and research and editing. So I would generally say they would be choosing researching as their next goal. So my goal next time will be researching. So they click next. And it automatically prompts them with new goals. So if they have another one that they want to write, they can totally add that in there, but I've given them some ideas of what they can use. So they're writing, I can find appropriate research sources, I can make notes, so on and so forth. I can understand and make sense of my research. I can organize in a logical way to help me write. And as we're going through, and I'm noticing that there might be a specific goal area that people are struggling with, I can just simply go back into my copy and scroll down all the way to it and change, oh, there it is, researching, and just add another one if there was one there. So if I'm noticing that there's if there's something common, then they can add that. And they pick one, say they, oh, I'm going to go back. I'm going to pick a goal area. I can make notes to avoid plagiarism. Sometimes that's a big problem in grade 4. And it just says thank you, and then they hit submit. And they're going to write that down in their goal. So once they've hit submit, on the teacher copy, you can see that there's a response of 1. So you go back through, and this is the best part for a teacher, and this is one of the reasons why I have them doing this one, is because it gives you a summary and a status of the class. So it tells you what day you're conferencing on, what days you got your conferencing on. Now, if you had more than one response, it will tell you who you've already conferenced with. It will tell you what percentage of students in your classroom are writing narratives or recounts or reports or persuasive texts. So it does give you an idea of who's writing what and where maybe your instruction can focus. And then you get a summary of the students' responses for each section. And so for report writing, I can see, okay, where are people struggling? They're struggling with the pre-writing stage. Are they struggling with drafting? So it'll give me a bar graph for each of the areas. So I'm not having to look at a bunch of papers and tally that. It's just giving that to me in terms of the responses and what their goals will be too, which is really helpful if you're looking at what their goals will be. It tells you, okay, there's my class's goals are here. So I find this kind of data mining really, I'm kind of a data junkie, so I find it really helpful to be able to glean that information. So that is kind of how I grab data from my conferencing, and I'll make a Google form for other subjects as well, just because it's often easier to give them that framework, and then students can be a little bit more reflective, and then you have evidence, and you're not going to lose that paper. Excuse me. And you're going to know kind of what it is you're looking for. So I do find that's one of the ways that Google Forms is really, really helpful in terms of gathering information, especially for a conference. So